Alright everyone, welcome back to the A to Z of Python. It's another thought-provoking episode. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things in the world, that's Json. And I covered APIs and API access and how to work through the data in a previous video series, but JSON is so important, I think that you sort of have to go over it again. And it's like one of those things that every newbie that gets into programming, the first thing they want to do is generally start working with APIs because you can harness so much powerful information. And it's just the preferred way to fetch data from platforms now. So you're going to need to get familiar with this concept, so it doesn't hurt to go over it again. So let's start by talking about what JSON is. So this is, let me make this a little bigger. This is a JSON response from an API. It's a tides and currents. It's a government API. And it's essentially a place in Florida called Lake Worth Pier. And this is the temperature of the water and the timestamp that it was taken. And it goes, throughout the day and gives you a bunch of readings. And this is cool if you want to go back through time and check water temperatures, whatever. But the interesting thing is how this is structured. So it looks like a bit of a mess because there's no formatting applied. It's just one long blob of text to fill the whole screen up. But what's really going on here is somewhere in their database, there's these lists of temperatures and timestamps. And based on the query from the URL, it's getting the information that we ask for from the database and serializing it in a way that has a very particular format. And this is kind of like a universal standard known as JSON. And this can be interpreted by all different programming languages. And especially in Python, it's very easy to work with. But what happens is you notice that this looks like a dictionary. And this looks like a list, right? So there's a whole bunch of values inside this list. So it's essentially like a couple of nested objects here. But the way JSON works is you can't if say I wanted this temperature information and I go to the website to get the info, well, the internet doesn't work in a way that you can pass objects like just pass the actual dictionary over the internet. There's too many variances between the different programming languages really for that to work. So what happens is it takes the standard format and literally makes it a JSON string, if you will. It's just one variable with in parentheses. It's like this gigantic string, and it's encapsulated by a single quote, which you don't see because the browser doesn't display it. And then everywhere else that there would be quotations, they're double quotes to keep from breaking the string up. So this is just one gigantic string. And if you were to request this URL in Python, you would get back one gigantic string of text, just like this. And then the beauty is that we can break that down into its components, such as dictionaries and lists, and we can iterate over them. It's very, very powerful. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So let's create our own, and we'll do something called player salaries, and it's going to be a dictionary of players, and we're going to have a list of two players. This will be NFL players, so we'll have a running back and a quarterback. So let's just start with a dictionary, and we'll put position, and we'll make these a running back, and let's do salary. And we'll say they make $2.3 million per year. Okay, and that's not supposed to be there. And we'll do one more. And we'll do, again, position. And this time there'll be a quarterback. And, of course, they need a salary too, right? So we'll do salary. And let's make them really, really good. So they get a whole bunch of money, 7.4 million per year. So we can print this out, and it's nothing special. Okay, it just prints the data structure here. So if you even if you don't understand what JSON is, hopefully at this point you understand dictionaries and lists enough to kind of see what's going on here. But if we wanted to hammer down a little bit, we could do print, and we could do players, and there you go. So now we're basically printing everything, the value of the player's key, and this is a list at this point, you see from these brackets. So if we want to go even further, we would have to specify the index. So let's print the first one, and there you go. And then we could do, if we want their position, we could go one step further and running back. And then of course if we want to get the next one, we just increment the index, and there you go. So hopefully you understand what's going on here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on navigating through the different sort of navigating through dictionaries and lists, because it's not really what this is about. But when you get JSON responses, they're going to look like this, and if you don't know how to access the individual elements, it's going to be worthless to you. So this hopefully gives you just a starting point to understand how this works. So we could even do just one last thing you could do for I in player salaries players. So if we want to iterate over these two players in this list, we can do it this way. So we access each item in these values essentially, and we can do print I position, and then I salary, and there you go. So this is how you, like, if we go back to the stuff here, if we wanted to print every single item in this, we would have to do for I in data, and then do I sub T sub V, and it would look basically just like this, but with the correct words subbed in here, and that's all you'd have to do. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, as it stands right now, the reason that we're able to do all of this is literally because this is an object. It's an iterable object. It's a dictionary, and there's lists and other dictionaries inside of it, but we can't send this over the internet. So if I wanted to send this to a website that will save this in a database or something like that, it's not going to handle this whatsoever. It just doesn't work that way. And you'll notice that where these are all double quotes, I've built this with single quotes just because I like it better, and that's going to cause a problem too. So we need to essentially convert this into JSON format, so it's a string, one single string, and then we can do whatever we want with that. So the way that works is there's some, let's do JSON salaries equals, we're going to use something called JSON.dumps, and this basically dumps the string, dumps the salaries as a string object essentially. So let's look at that. So we'll do JSON.dumps, and we'll do player salaries, and let's get rid of this stuff and just focus on that. Oh yeah, by the way, import JSON because we're going to need that. There we go. So that's important too. So if you don't need JSON to work with the dictionaries in the list, but when you start manipulating them, converting them back and forth, you will need JSON. So go ahead and import that, and let's see what it looks like. Let's print player salaries, and then we'll print JSON salaries and see what the difference is. Okay, so essentially you'll notice the first thing is that it looks pretty similar, but the quotes have changed. Okay, so we know that it did some kind of like conversion here. And again, if I could print player salaries, players, and get that information just like before. But if I try to print JSON salaries players, I'm going to get a problem because it's a string. Okay, and if I went like for I in JSON salaries print I, well, you'll see what happens. It prints it like this because this is now just a string, and each item is the character in the string. Okay, so we know for a fact. We could even do print type, just so you like understand what's going on here. So it's a string class, okay? It is not like an object. It's not a dictionary. It's a string, and that's very important. So this is now by doing the JSON salaries thing here and doing the dumps, we've prepared it to either be beamed over the internet with like a request .put, or maybe written to a text file or written to a database. It's just a string, so you can kind of do whatever you want with it. So let's see what we can do. So let's write this to a text file. There we go. And let's try something here. Let's do f.write, and we'll do player salaries, and we're going to write try to write the actual object here and run that. Okay, so it's saying that it can't. There's a dict writer function, so you could technically do this, but the basic writing to a text file, it's expecting a string, not a dictionary. And this is like the fundamental problem and the reason JSON exists, because there's no easy way really to store this complex data structure in a single line of text, like in a CSV file or text file or whatever. But what we could do is do json.dump. Now the difference is when we're doing dumps, we're saving it as like a string, but when we do dump, we're basically just doing it as like a, I don't know how to explain the difference, but dump would be when you're writing it as like sending it as a variable or whatever, and dumps is when you want to just kind of stringify it. So don't use dumps here, you will get a problem. Use dump, and this becomes a function that accepts the object that you're dumping. So we're going to do player salaries and the file itself. So this is really for writing to a file or reading from a file if you do the other version of this, and this is for just saving it to a string. Okay, so if we run this, we don't have any error codes anymore, and this is actually if we go to here, we can see, and that's a little small, I'm sorry, but you can see that it was written. Okay, so it was successfully written to a file, and that's the way that you would write a JSON object like this right here, like a dictionary, to a file. And then we can turn around and open it back up. And we'll do data equals, or let's just do print. We'll do data equals json.load and f. Print data. There you go. So what's happened here? Well, you'll notice that when it's dumped into, let's try it like this. Let's do data equals, no, let's not do that. I'm trying to think of a way to do this, but what you'll notice is that you can tell by the quotation marks, the single quotes, that it's been converted back into an actual object, and it's not a string anymore. If it were a like a dumps string, it would be double quotes here, and it would be single quotes out here, and it would be a string object. But if we were to print the type, just to kind of show you, all right, it's a dictionary, which is pretty cool. So we've written a dictionary as a string here with the JSON dump, and then we've loaded it in from the string to a dictionary object once again, which is really cool, because then if we wanted to, we could, let's get rid of this and make this a little smaller. We can do print data players, and it works just like it did before. Okay, so this is how you write data, JSON data, to a text file, and this is how you read it back in. And actually, what we could do here is we could do, let's see, print f.read, and let's see what that does. Oh, no, you can't do that. We can do, alright, well, that doesn't that doesn't work. So let's not try to do that. But what I'm trying to show you here is that this is actually doing something. It's converting it back to a dictionary object, which is what you want to do. So if you have a response like this and you need to handle it, these are some tools that you can use. So let's see what that really works like. Oh, and one more thing. You don't have to print it as just one giant mess. We can actually make it look a little bit better. So let's do print json.dumps and do player salaries, sort keys true, and indent, which is the really important part, 4. And we'll run this. And what you'll notice is that this is the standard print, and this is like a pretty print, what they call it. And we've basically told it to sort them alphabetically and to indent after each sort of object here. So this is the format that if you were to create this normally and you had a really big one, you'd want to create it like this so that people can read what the hell it is. But this makes it easier to figure out what you're doing. So we know the first key is players, and then we know there's a list and there's these keys, so it makes it easier to kind of create something like this where you're trying to specify a particular salary or something like that. So for a big giant mess like this, this type of printout is much easier to read. Now for me, when I go to APIs, I kind of like to just paste it into the browser and see what I get back before I start working with it in Python. There is a way, if we go in, now I'm in incognito mode here to disable the add-ons, but if I go back, I have this add-on here called JSON View, which is something you can get from the Chrome App Store, and it sort of makes this a very pretty printout here, and this is pretty powerful. So let's take this URL and go back to Python, and let's get rid of all this, and we'll import requests so we can actually do the API call and get the JSON. And we're going to do URL equals this gigantic URL, and we're going to do requests. We'll do r equals request.get. And this is in the API video that I've done on another video segment. So if you don't know what I'm doing with the requests, go check that out. And then we're going to do URL, and we're going to do .json. And this is essentially going to save this into the variable r. And then I can just do print r and that's the whole thing. Now the problem here is that these are nested so deep, and this one's not too bad, but some of them get really complicated, like a Twitter response is got so many layers to it, it's almost impossible to tell. So an add-on like this is really powerful because I can go, let's say I want to get this first temperature, I can right click and do copy path, and if I paste this in, okay, I know that that's R sub data index 0. So I could do R data index 0 T. Okay, so I'm rebuilding this. This is more of like a JavaScript format, but you get the idea. So when I run, I get the timestamp of this one. Okay, so instead of trying to guess, and this is like a simple one, but sometimes they get nested so deep it's hard to tell. An add-on like this will make it very, very easy for you to just jump to what you want. So we know we could do something like for I and R data print I, and that should do something. Okay, so there's all of the temperature readings throughout the day. I could do something like V and get just the temperature readings. So that's an actual real world example of getting a JSON request and getting it kind of honed in to print out just what we're looking for. And that's essentially it for JSON. Just know that when you can sort of JSON anything. You can take like a dictionary or a list and you can make it JSON, and essentially makes it into a standard string that you can pass around. And when you are submitting to an API and it asks for the submission to be in JSON format, you'll have to do json.dumps on the dictionary or the list before you send it over. And when you're retrieving information from an API like here, you want to and you want to work with it or send it back, you'd have to dump it again. So this built-in JSON thing here, this is pretty cool. It just takes the string and converts it to an object for us. So this is essentially doing like a JSON.loads and getting it into the object again for us. So hopefully that gets you started. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to elaborate. Just leave a comment. And otherwise, I hope this is enough to get you started. And